is Doris Hanson, and it's my privilege to host this program, Polygamy, What Love Is This? I was born and raised in a polygamy group, and I was taught from the cradle that if we didn't practice polygamy, we faced hell and damnation and the eternal wrath of God. It was many years later that I discovered that polygamy wasn't a command from God. It didn't come from His mind and heart, but it did come from the hearts and minds of men. And so we do this show because we want polygamists everywhere to know that polygamy didn't come from God. You don't have to live it to please Him. You don't have to live polygamy to get into exaltation, and we want you all to know that. This is a live broadcast from Salt Lake City, Utah, and our telephone number is 801-973-TV20, 801-973-8820. We are a telephone call-in program, and we do invite your phone calls a little bit later on in the program. For questions and comments that you may want to make off the air, you can email us. The TV@aboutpolygamy.com is our email address, and we would be happy to hear from you either on the telephone or by email. And all of our previous shows can be watched on streaming video on our website, whatloveisthis.tv. And also, if you would like to see what our top questions have been asked on the program, you can go to whatloveisthis.tv/answers. And of course, the answers are there too. And if the question that you have to ask would like to ask is on that website, you can get your answer there. You won't need to call in. And you can, of course, reformulate a different question if you'd like. We do have a monthly support discussion group for those whose lives have been touched by polygamy in some way or another. We meet every month, and our next meeting is next Monday. It's a Life After Polygamy, and there is life after polygamy. For those of you who have left or are thinking of leaving, we would love to be your support for the process. The meeting is at 6:30 p.m. and I would love to give you the information if you want to email us, tv@aboutpolygamy.com, or you can call in and leave contact information and I'll get a hold of you and we can give you the details. You can log on to our website, shieldandrefuge.org, to find out more about us, about our ministry and what we do. You can donate to our ministry on the website. You can also find out about our resources. We have a DVD, Lifting the Veil of Polygamy, and a book, Is Polygamy Biblical? That's very helpful for those who have questions about polygamy or would like to know more about it. And if you're in a polygamy group and you would like to have information about how we can help you, we can even help you leave a group if you would like. You can contact us by our toll-free telephone number. It's 877-425-9993. All information is kept confidential, but we would love to hear from you. And this is the final reminder of the Capstone Conference coming up this weekend. We've been talking about it the past 2 or 3 weeks. It starts tomorrow evening, and it lasts tomorrow evening and on Saturday. There's guests from all over the nation are going to be there to be speaking, and the conference is free, but pre-registration is required. You can go onto the website, capstoneconference.com, and get full information for registration and also the agenda and the guests. It's going to be held at Calvary Chapel, 460 Century Drive here in Salt Lake City, and this promises to be a great time and a place to learn and share about our culture. And also, I would like to make one quick comment. I received a phone call, actually it was a voice message from Brent H. I'm not going to say his last name, but he knows who he is. And Brent, I got your message, and I want to thank you very much for calling and for leaving that information. We are grateful that you let us know we're helping you, and we do hope we'll continue to help you and that we'll also be helping many others. So thank you for calling and leaving your message. Contrary to what many people understand in the makeup of Utah's polygamous culture, the term FLDS is not a generic name or term for all polygamists. Now, I know I've said this on the show before, and I'll probably have to say it again, but we get the feedback all the time where people just make a blanket statement about polygamists, but they call them FLDS. And it's just like if you go to the grocery store and you want to buy some tissue. You can buy all kinds of tissues there. Kleenex is not the only one who makes tissue. And that's the way it is with FLDS is not the only thing around that are polygamous. polygamists. There's several different polygamy groups. If you want to refer to all polygamists, you should call them Mormon fundamentalists or just plain polygamists. There are many different kinds. For example, the Church of the Lamb of God is the name of a polygamy group. It's the name of the Ervil LeBaron group. And they are polygamists, but they are not FLDS. And there's the Latter-day Church of Christ. They are the Kingston Clan. The Kingston Clan is also known as the Davis County Cooperative Society. And they also are nicknamed the Order or the Co-op. They're polygamists, but they have nothing to do with the FLDS. We have the True and Living Church of Jesus Christ of the Later Days. That is the Jim Harmston group in Manti, and they are polygamists, but they're not FLDS. And then we have, of course, the AUB, or the Apostolic United Brethren, also known as the All Red group, and we're going to be talking about them quite a bit tonight. And again, they are a breakoff from the FLDS way back when, but they are not part of the FLDS. So we just thought we would say that so that people who watch the show can know the difference in when we're dealing with different polygamy groups. Although tonight we're going to briefly discuss some individual characteristics of some of these groups if we have time, we want to focus mainly on the All Red group, or the AUB. The AUB is the polygamy group that claims to be squeaky clean, innocent of all of the dirty deeds that some of the other groups, some of the other polygamy groups have been found guilty of doing. And I'd like to read a partial newspaper article that was posted on the website rickross.com. I'm only going to read part of the article, but it was originally published by the Deseret News, May of 2008. And that would have been just a few weeks after the rescue attempt in El Dorado at the YFZ Ranch. Now, the All Red group was at that time quite concerned about being painted with the same broad brush as the FLDS. They wanted to distance themselves from the FLDS. So in part, the newspaper article said, the Bluffdale-based Apostolic United Brethren issued a statement from its leadership distancing themselves from the FLDS Church. The AUB said polygamy is one of its basic tenets, but said it strongly differs in many beliefs from the FLDS Church. Now, did you hear that they said polygamy is part of its basic tenets? Polygamy is a felony, so they're admitting that a felony is part of their religious beliefs. They went on to say, we are and always have been opposed to abuse and oppression of any kind, and we feel it's our duty to promptly report any suspected abuse to the proper law enforcement authorities, the AUB leaders said. We do not encourage or permit child bride marriages or arranged marriages. Forced, assigned, or arranged marriages are not part of our belief or practice. Now, you can get the full article on rickross.com website if you want to read the whole article. Now, to help us unravel truth from error in these statements, we have again invited our guest tonight. He was here last week on the show in February and offered us a lot of good information, so we invited him again tonight to help us with these statements. Mr. John R. Llewellyn, again, is our guest tonight. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for inviting me.
We're going to talk about the group that you were part of at one time.
Yes, I was a part of AUB for close to 20 years.
Mm-hmm. And so you know.
I know, yeah.
You know what you're talking about.
And it would be interesting if you was to ask me about each one of those contentions that...
I'm going to in just about a minute.
All right.
We will discuss those and see if we can unravel truth from error. But first, last time you were here, we weren't able to talk as much about your blog. We just barely got it in, so I want to give you the opportunity to tell our viewers about your blog.
Well, the blog is www.polygamybooks.org, and it's very interesting. The last 2 or 3 days we've been getting a lot of comments from apparently an individual who is either in AUB or is very knowledgeable, but he's quite concerned with some of the comments that I have made regarding the Virginia Hill theft and the Utah Supreme Court ruling regarding that. So there's been a lot of good activity, and this individual, I don't know if it's his real name or not, so I won't even mention it, but I've been waiting for him to make some comments, because I've been wanting to get a dialogue going with someone there so that we can get to the truth, because there are so many stories going around about Virginia Hill that are just totally untrue.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about Virginia Hill a little later, and maybe spend a block of time on that as well. So the polygamybooks.org, and you're inviting our viewers to strike up a dialogue with you on the blog, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
I think that it's very educational, but I want an intellectual conversation. I don't want name calling or stuff like that. Yeah. They can attack me if they want. That's not going to bother me. I'm used to that.
But that doesn't get anywhere.
Right. No. But if there's too much of the attacking the messenger rather than concentrating on the issues, why we just won't post their comments.
Okay, good. So it's www.polygamybooks.org if you would like to be involved with his blog. Now, last time that you were here, we talked about your book, The Polygamy Rape of Rachel Strong,
yes,
a girl in the Manti-Polygamy group, the Harmston group, who was denied justice, highly abused, but denied justice. Tonight we want to talk about your book, Polygamy Under Attack, and there should be a graphic come up on the screen here. Polygamy Under Attack, from Tom Green to Brian David Mitchell. And would you like to tell our viewers how they can pick up this book?
Amazon.com is the best and the easiest way to get it, or you can just Google my name and it'll bring it up. Agreca Books is the publisher. It's very easy to obtain. That's the easiest way to get it.
And if you're interested in the different polygamy groups, this is really a good book to go to for that. And we're going to summarize. In this book, you've summarized a lot of information into just a little bit about a lot of the little polygamy groups around, as well as the larger ones. But tonight we want to focus on the AUB, the All-Red Polygamy Group, as much as we can. And so what I would like to do is, if you would briefly just explain to our viewers how the AUB got its beginning, and how it uniquely became the AUB, and does it have relationship with other polygamy groups?
Well, all the polygamy groups are really in competition with each other for members and the tithing dollar. But you have to go back to Llewellyn in the 1886 revelation, the alleged 1886 revelation, and the 8-hour meeting. We have Joseph Musser. Llewellyn Woolley is the one who came up with that story. I call it a fable because there's just no way of actually proving that it took place. But it was sufficient enough, and it affected the Y chromosomes in these men, that they decided that they needed to continue the practice. So at one time in the 20s, it was under the leader was Joseph Musser, and there was a group of men, John Y. Barlow, I believe, was the one, who wanted to find a place where they would be isolated and could practice their religion unmolested. And so they went down and established Short Creek. There was allegedly some things occurring down there that wasn't proper. And Llewellyn Allred was kind of behind the exposing it. And he was able to convince Joseph Musser to form a new group because these people down in Short Creek were out of order. So that's how the Allred group, or AUB, the Apostolic United Brethren, came into being. Is Joseph Musser formed this new group, and they went off to their side and stayed here in Salt Lake County and Utah counties, and then it just built from there. And of course, Llewellyn was murdered by Orville LeBaron in 1977.
Right. Now, when you say Short Creek was the name before it was incorporated into FLDS.
Correct. It's now Colorado City.
Right.
And then Hilldale. Yeah.
Okay, so that's how AUB got its start. Now, you have experience as a former AUB member and as a former police investigator of sexual crimes in polygamy groups. And so, based on this article that I read, I would like to ask you, is there squeaky clean claims true? And if not, how do they successfully hide their misdeeds? And let's talk about these points. I've got 4 points that they claim in this article.
All right, so let's go down the points.
They said, they claim they promptly report any suspected abuse.
Okay, that's not true. When I was there were rumors of molests and things that were going on with some of the apostles, the high priest apostles, or the men on Owen Allred's council. There were 3 of them that were eventually kicked out of the group because of alleged molest of their children. One of them wound up going to prison. Now, for 8 years, I specialized in sex crime investigation at the sheriff's office. I gave seminars. I taught at the police academy. And some of the things that went on with this one fellow named Palacio, it was about as disgusting as any sex crime that I investigated while a deputy sheriff. And he did have the integrity to admit to it and plead guilty, and he was immediately sent to prison. He might still be down there, or he might be out by now. But no, it's not true. The rumors go on, and was plenty of stories about going to the council. Lemoyne Jensen, for example, with Palacio, and Lemoyne allegedly talked to Palacio and says, "Now you got to knock this off with these kids. You can't do that." You know, it's only natural.
They didn't promptly report it at all.
Only after it became so obvious or came to the attention of law enforcement or the public, then they behaved as if they suddenly found out about it and kicked the people out.
Okay.
So there's no truth to that, you know. And I found out in the lawsuit of Virginia Hill that the leadership here are really some very good prevaricators, liars, downright liars. You know, there's a doctrine lying for the Lord. And I remember one time in a general priesthood meeting, Orman Lavery gave a talk, and he said that he would lie through the teeth to save the priesthood.
Yes.
And this goes clear back to the time of Joseph Smith and when they were in Missouri.
Absolutely.
And
it sure does. Well, their next claim was that there's no child bride marriages with the AUB. Is that true?
That's pretty much true.
That's pretty much true. That's good.
AUB is probably the most liberal of all of the polygamous groups. And a lot of the members are pretty decent people, and they try to live at a higher standard than what the rest of the people do. So there's a lot of truth to that.
Okay, how about arranged marriages? They claim there's no arranged marriages.
Not really, but in some cases where a woman has been released from an abusive husband or something, they will guide them into a different into a family.
So the prophet doesn't, now I know the Kingston groups have the prophet who will say, well, I think you should do this, and the FLDS does that thing as well. They say that they're making that they can make their own choices, but the prophet really is the one who makes the choices for them.
The people, the young women and the young men do have a lot of free agency where into what family they go to in AUB. But they have to get the approval of the prophet, of the leader.
Okay. And then the next one, I don't know how in the world, this is a very blanket statement, but the next one is they claim there is no oppression of any kind.
Well, that's not exactly true. They try to be fair, but I could name some ladies who would really disagree with that. And
I have a comment about that a little bit later too. But there was no disclaimer on something that I thought I'd ask you about, and they made these other disclaimers, but no disclaimer about incest. Do they practice incest like some of these other groups do?
As far as I know, they don't. But they do have a problem with pedophilia, child molest in that group. They have had a problem. What it is since I left in '94, I don't know.
You know what? It's in every group.
I think it is. I've heard stories, you know, when I was involved with Tapestry Against Polygamy, they would ask me to interview some of these women with their complaints. And so I've talked with ladies out of every single one of the group. And every single, without any exception, there's these wild, terrible stories of child molest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It just kind of goes with the program. You know, the pro-polygamist, what was it, Ann Wild and those gals, what do they call their group?
Principal
Voices, yeah. They claimed that there's no more abuse, sexual abuse or anything like that among the polygamists than there are in mainstream society. But I firmly disagree with it. After investigating it and see what goes on in both, the polygamist groups, the organized polygamist groups, provide the environment for these things to take place. Pedophiles are attracted because of the priesthood authority, the power that they have over the wives and the families. And of course, each man is different on how much authority or oppression that he exerts with his family and his daughters.
You know, when I discuss different internal crimes in polygamy groups, and I will get feedback like that a lot. Well, there's abuses that go on in regular society, and these crimes and that crimes, and it goes on all over the place. I don't know why you're picking on us, but you know what I have to say about that is, first of all, just because somebody else is in this kind of a crime or this kind of a sin doesn't justify that they're in that kind of a crime or a sin. And when these polygamy groups say, we are the exclusive kingdom of God, we are God's holy people, wouldn't you think that those crimes would be less or even non-existent?
They should, because they claim to be living higher laws.
Right.
But you know what? In the Virginia Hill, and we're going to talk about that later, I guess.
In just a minute, yeah.
Look, they acted just like common criminals. For people who lived in higher laws, it
doesn't make any sense. You know, how many members would you estimate are in the AUB?
Well, in 94, 95, they claimed that there were about 5,000. Since then, they say that it's gone up to maybe as high as 7,000 to 10,000. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, it is very hard.
But if they want to, you know, include the dogs, the sheep, and the horses and everything, they might have 7,000 or 8,000. Yeah.
Now, there's communities of the AUB. They have one in Santaquin and Colorado City and Lovell, Wyoming. I think there are some up there.
Yeah, there's a few up there, and you can even go down into Mexico. They got a large community.
That's right, they do.
And I think they have an endowment house down there too.
Yeah,
like
and they've got one in Missouri and Georgia. Do they have one in Georgia?
I don't know anything about Georgia, but you know they got Pinesdale, Montana.
And you know, I was up in Pinesdale.
And in Cedar City, outside of Cedar City, and then they bought 900 acres in Sanpete County.
That's
where
right.
I think they plan on having a community there. You know, and eventually incorporate it because they do have enough water.
Yeah, they finally got the water rights, I think. I was in the Pinesdale community a couple of years ago. Very pretty up there. They've got a lot of homes up there in their community on the mountainside. And I talked with an ex-member of the AUB, and that ex-member told me that they had chronicled so much abuse in just the Pinesdale community that it filled 50 pages of information. And they said that no victim will come forward, and so there can be no charges filed. And so far, there's at least the last I heard, there had not been anything come forward. And I heard it from someone else as well. I mean, not just one person, but another person also told me the same thing. And so the abusers continue to abuse, and of course the one who needs help, the ones that's been abused, still don't get help. Now let's go to the Virginia Hill case. Okay. In this book, on page 44, you begin a story about fraud in the AUB that has to do with Virginia Hill and a lawsuit against them on her behalf. So we've got, about 5 or 6 minutes that you can quickly tell the story and how it is. And I'd like to tell our viewers that if you want to start calling in, you can now. We won't answer the phone take your call for 5 or 6 minutes, but you can start calling in now if you would like, have question or comments that you would like to make to our our guest tonight. Okay. So tell us about Virginia Hill. What's going on?
Well, in 1986, she separated from her husband in Detroit. And she had a mother and an uncle in St. George, Utah. So she wanted to, she found out that her husband was cheating on her, and it was quite traumatic for her. So what she did is converted all of her money. He happened to be part of the Detroit mob, and it was a gambler. But she had her money, and he had his money. And the FBI was investigating him. So she converted all her money to cash and sent it down to St. George. Well, it just so happened that her uncle and mother were acolytes of a man named John Shugart, who was a dissident from the Allred group. He and Owen Allred had tried to buy the DI Ranch, which is a Desert Inn ranch, which happened to have been the Las Vegas mob's recreational ranch back in the 50s and 60s. This has got so many twists and turns. It's the most fascinating investigation that I have conducted in my career. But anyway, this John Shugart was very charismatic, and she trusted him. And she wanted to buy a ranch where she could be away and, and rebuild her life. So he talked her into buying the DI Ranch, which was up for sale at the time. But Shugart couldn't negotiate the deal with Herb Fletcher, the owner of it, because there was a lot of bad feelings. So what he did was got a friend of his by the name of Dennis Matthews and asked him if he wouldn't negotiate the deal. Well, to make a long story short, he brought in a fellow named John Pupfin, a very charismatic and an extremely intelligent guy. And he's the one who masterminded the theft. This is more of a theft by deception rather than a fraud. So anyway, they wind up giving these two men $1.5 million, which is the selling price of the ranch. So instead of buying the ranch, they went directly to Owen Allred. And they said, this Shugart, who was Owen Allred's enemy, has all this money, and they convinced him that he had converted Virginia, who was very wealthy, and that he would be an enemy. So they asked Owen if he wouldn't consult with the Lord to see what they should do with this money, whether they should give it back or go ahead and buy the DI Ranch or whatever. Well, Owen Allred taped this conversation, so it was on tape. And we eventually wound up with a copy of that tape. So we knew everything that went on. And so there was a hesitation on the tape, and Owen comes back and says, we won't give the money back. What we will do is we'll get title to the Granite Ranch, which is out in Snake Valley, a ranch, there was a mortgage on it, and then we will get the DI Ranch. Well, they didn't buy the DI Ranch. A bunch of them got into Owen's van, and they went down and looked at the DI Ranch and decided that they didn't want to buy it, that they would just go ahead and invest in the Granite Ranch. And 5 days later, sure enough, they paid it off. But what happened is John Puffin set up all these shell corporations where they could launder the money, and then they were laundering it through these different corporations back through Lemoyne Jensen, who is now the prophet and the leader, into AUB. And that was the plan. Well, it took my partner and I, Rod Williams, about close to 4 years to build the case and to find an attorney that would take it on a contingency fee. But it has just been one really a challenge, the best challenge that I have ever had.
Wow.
And really a learning experience. So anyway, it went to the Supreme Court twice, and we finally got a ruling, and we are now in the process of getting the final judgment from the 4th District Court so that we can start collecting. And
now I
$6 million.
I want to make a comment here, and then maybe we might not need to go to the phones.
Okay.
We know that in polygamy groups, whatever the leadership says, the members believe. It doesn't make any difference what they say. The members believe it because it's the leadership who said it.
That seems to be the trend.
And they can lie, and the members will believe whatever they tell them. I've heard scuttlebutt within the AUB with the membership that when they received this money from Virginia Hill, that they got a funny feeling about it, and they decided they didn't want to keep the money, and the leadership told them to send the money back, and so they did. They sent the money back to her, but they didn't get a receipt, a delivery receipt, so therefore now they have to pay it back twice, and they really didn't steal the money at all. This is what the members all believe.
Well, there's absolutely no truth to it whatsoever. Absolutely no truth. And I've heard some of the most weird stories come out, for instance, that Virginia had donated the money, which is absolutely not true. They stole it. She came looking for the money. She hired a detective to try to find John Putnam. But, you know, these people they're pathological liars. They're very convincing liars. And so she went to Owen Allred asking his help in finding John Putnam, because Dennis Matthews said that John Putnam took the money and just disappeared. They didn't know where he was. Well, they all knew where he was, including Lemoyne Jensen. So she goes, Ogden Kraut arranged the meeting. She goes to Owen Allred, to his office there in Bluffdale, and she asks him, can you help me find this John Putnam? He says, I can't. I don't know where it is. Well, do you know anything about my money? He says, I don't know. And the fact of the matter is the money was in a closet probably 15 feet away from where that was taking place.
Oh, my goodness. Money is the driving force. Money and sex seems to be the driving force in these groups, doesn't it?
It's surprising how people change with money. And then they started cheating each other. When the IRS and the sheriff's office got after the guy, Jeff Norman, who was doing the laundering, him and his wife, why Owen and Matthews panicked, and they give them the remainder of the cash to John Putnam. So after the investigation was over with the IRS and the sheriff's office, they wanted John Putnam to give the money back. And he says, no, I'm not giving it back. And he took off to New Zealand thinking that he was going to stay in New Zealand until the statute of limitations run out. And as smart a guy as he was, he didn't know that when you leave the state to avoid prosecution, the clock stops. And when you come back, it starts up again.
Oh, dear.
And then there's another thing, too. Owen and Lemoyne and those guys thought that they were off the hook, too, because of it was in '97 before we finally filed the lawsuits. But the clock doesn't stop until the victim finds out who the perpetrators were.
Oh,
and so Rod and I found out that there was all these other perpetrators, and in '95, and then we continued to bill it. So they come into the statute of limitations didn't help them, but we had to go to the Supreme Court to resolve it all.
Okay.
We got a good Utah Supreme Court.
That's good. That's good to hear that some justice is being watched. Well, we're going to go to some phone calls. We've got a lot of phone calls here waiting, but first of all, we have a message that we would like to show to our viewers, and then we're going to take some phone calls. Are you thinking of leaving your polygamous situation? Are you afraid to leave because you might lose the love of your friends and your family and perhaps even the love of God? Are you afraid you'll become destitute if you do leave? When I ran away from my fundamentalist upbringing and the polygamy environment I was raised in, I had no safe place to go, no place that I knew that I would be safe after I left. And I was so naive, I didn't know that I was exchanging one bad situation for another one. In those days, there were no organizations established to help people who needed to safely exit a polygamist environment. That's why a Shield and Refuge ministry exists today. We're here to help those who want to leave a polygamous situation safely and without fear. We do provide you with a safe refuge, and you will be shielded from those who would harm you. So if you're thinking of leaving your polygamous situation, give us a call. We're here waiting to hear from you. Our telephone number toll-free is 1-877-425-9993. If you have access to the internet, you can locate us at www.shieldandrefuge.org, and you can contact us immediately, day or night. We would love to help you. God has made a promise in Psalm 91:4 that He shall cover you with His feathers, and you can take refuge under His wings. And it's His truth that will be your shield. And we want all polygamists that are watching tonight, if there's anyone out there who is doubting what you're doing and you really would like to talk to someone, or if you'd just like to get out, give us a call, and we will do everything we can to help you. Now, we do have a lot of phone calls here. Let's take line 2 with Mike in Salt Lake City. Hello, Mike.
Hi.
Hi, Mike. You're on the air.
Hey, great. You know what? This one goes to either you or to John. And he's a great guest, by the way. I just caught him the second time. I turned on a little while ago, or I can't remember how many weeks ago, and saw him on there. But
yes.
Anyhow, my question, first off, where I'm coming from as a friend, so I'm not stirring the pot with a question. But concerning like the Jeff's situation with Warren, when I believe when it went to court, or what the prosecution was over, was the girl that was married, and then there was the younger husband that was, why are not these cases coming forward, the older guys, the predatory type of thing, with the young girls? Because that's, apparently a lot of that going on. But why aren't these coming to prosecution? Because it seems that really is the one that turns everyone's stomach, you know. And then the younger guy, I think people kind of sympathize with his position in it or something. I know he ended up going to prison or something over it. But go ahead, and I'll just turn off my phone.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, those older guys are being prosecuted in Texas. If you'll watch the newspapers, they make some comments there. Now, the young boy that married the Wald girl, you know, having been in it and knowing how these people are brainwashed and indoctrinated, I see him as much a victim just about as she is. But the law doesn't look at it that way, because he's old enough to know the difference between right and wrong. And even though he was trying to live up to what his prophet told him to do, he is still responsible for his actions. But so I think that that the prosecutors have to prosecute him to send a message, but I don't think that he should spend 5 years in prison. That's my own opinion. But that's what the punishment is, 0 to 5 if he's convicted.
Yeah. But I'd also like to add to what John says too, and that's something I mentioned a little earlier. If there are charges or abuses that are taking place in these groups and a victim doesn't come forward, there's no charges that can be filed. There's no case that can be done. And even with Alyssa Wall, she went through the emotional ringer before she finally decided that she would go ahead and press the charges. If she hadn't come forward and pressed charges, that case wouldn't even have happened.
You know, and that's typical of all of the victims. They go through this emotional, traumatic thing until they finally decide that hell couldn't be worse than what they were living. Now, that's the way Rachel Strong was.
Yeah. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, let's go to Fred on line 1. Oh, are you still there? No, I guess not. Okay. Fred, line 1, you're on the air.
Oh, how are you?
Hi. Hello?
I have a question for the gentleman. A clarification, please. I'm not sure that I understood him correctly, but I know that he did say that certain of the leaders lied and lied and lied to maintain their position. And he mentioned Joseph Smith in Missouri. Did he claim in that statement that the leaders of the church in that time also lied and lied and lied to maintain their position, or did I misunderstand him?
No, you didn't misunderstand. It seems to be part of the nature of this type of a lifestyle. Joseph Smith lied about living polygamy, and so did a lot of his acolytes. Parley P. Pratt lied. John Taylor lied. There were several of them that lied. This is all documented, And
In
part
which
of
way
history.
did they lie? What did they lie about?
They lied about living plural marriage. When it was leaked out that they were living plural marriage, they gave statements, and I think in some of their publications they denied it. There was just no question that it was that they were lying. And it's called lying for the Lord. It still goes on now
It does.
to save the priesthood. It's part of the very nature of this type of a lifestyle.
You know, Fred,
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, let's call it the Big Mormon Church in Salt Lake City, does not practice polygamy at the moment.
No,
does it?
they don't. No, they suspended the practice in 1890. It's called the Manifesto. Wilford Woodruff was the prophet then, and they did it so that they could get statehood. And the problem was that some of them went down into Mexico and continued to practice, and then there was a couple of general authorities, I got a mental block of their names, who did practice it, and it came out in 1905. But since then, the church just kind of avoids the subject, but there's no polygamy in the LDS church right now.
Now, Fred, I'd like to make a statement here too. A couple of weeks ago, we did a show specifically about the lies and deceits that the early Mormon polygamists were involved in, and you can go online to our website, whatloveisthis.tv, and look at our previous programs. And it's a program we did with Sandra Tanner, and we documented so many of the lies that were told in the early Mormon church about polygamy, and how they flat out denied they were living it when Joseph Smith already had somewhere between 30 and 34 wives during the time that they were denying it. So the documentation is there.
Ma'am, thank you for your clarification. Have a nice day.
Thanks for calling. Good night. Okay, we have Lydia on line 3 from Logan. Hello, Lydia.
Hi.
Hi, you're on the air. What's your question?
I'm just wondering, could you tell me what religion, denomination you are? I'm very interested. And also, could you tell me, do you think there's a living prophet today, and if so, who is it?
The living prophet today is Jesus Christ. He's the only prophet that is eligible to have that title, and he is alive. God got it right the first time. He doesn't need to have people following behind him and saying things that are in contradiction to what he has already said. So the living prophet is Jesus Christ and him alone. Now, as far as my religion, I am a Christian, and I am very proud to be a Christian, and since I became a Christian, I have found and discovered many of the things that I was taught growing up were absolute fabrications and lies. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but we're all Christians. I am too. But I'm so interested in what denomination you actually are.
It doesn't matter what denomination, because if I'm a Christ follower, it doesn't matter what denomination I am. And you know, people can call themselves Christian all day long, but if they don't follow the standards of what the Bible says a Christian is, then that's you know, that's certainly up for grabs, isn't it?
I'm a skeptic. I don't want a middleman between me and God, if there is a God. I don't need a prophet or a pope. I'll just handle my exaltation on my own.
And the Bible says the only middleman is Jesus, so that's the prophet. I hope that answers your question, Lydia.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Okay, we have an off-the-air comment. It says, due to intermarriage, a family in southern Utah has over 150 cases of muscular dystrophy. That's a comment. Now, I don't know what particular family that is. That's very interesting, or how far back that goes. I do know that in the FLDS, the fumarase deficiency, they have more cases in that, just in that area, than the whole world, than there is in the whole world.
That's right. I'm trying to think of the reporter's name in the Phoenix New Times. He did a really good article on the genetic defects due to incest in the FLDS. And the Tribune, and I There was another good article about the genetic defects among the Kingstons due to incest.
And they do incest more closely than any of the other
Well,
groups
from
do.
what I understand from dissidents there, it's part of their doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
They just believe that their blood is pure and synonymous with Christ's blood.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is any defects, it's because of the blood coming from outside the group, which is a fallacy. But incest still is a problem. Oh, there's a guy, a Llewellyn down in southern Utah that there was real good, strong evidence that he was having sex with his daughters.
With his daughters, having children with his daughters to keep the blood pure.
That's
and,
right.
And when he got caught, his sons actually are the ones who caught him.
Right, well.
And challenged him, and he said it was artificial insemination he was doing, which is nonsense.
There was a relative of his who got a hold of me about that. And I told him that I would get statements from some of the witnesses if there was probable cause, that I would furnish it to the appropriate law enforcement, which I did. And my gosh, it wasn't until the brothers got involved almost a year later before law enforcement finally decided they wouldn't do anything.
Oh my goodness! Well, I don't know what it takes.
This is the thing is, they said that the incest statute said that there had to be penetration in order for there to be incest. And he claimed that they were artificially inseminated by the mother who happened to be dead. Well, there's still a lot of grounds, involving children that they could have taken those children out of it. My good heavens.
What does it take? What's the answer for some of this? It's just.
So we feel good about it now. We had the legislature make an amendment.
They finally changed it.
So that we can.
Yeah, that's true. They did that last year, I believe. Yeah. Okay, another off-the-air question. Was Mr. Llewellyn an officer of the law while he was in polygamy? How does he reconcile this?
Well, what I did was wrong. But you know what? What I learned, I've tried to make up in my books and also the investigation of Virginia Hill. My partner happened to have been in the Uniform Division of the Secret Service, was in the White House during the Nixon administration. And our combined efforts was able to build this case and expose what they did. So what I did was wrong, and I'm trying to make up for it. There's just no getting around it. However, I will say this. I don't make any apologies because of my children. I never would have had a posterity if I had not been without them. And there's no way I could reject them. Mm-hmm. And I will say this, that the plural wives that I had, I'm a monogamous now, confirmed monogamous, confirmed heterosexual. They were outstanding and good wives and good mothers. When it gets right down to it, I'm not really opposed to polygamy, having lived it. If you can get a man and 2 or 3 women to go ahead and live it where there's absolutely no coercion whatsoever and make it work, I say more power to them. The trouble is that nowadays, these days now, unless you have something to induce the women to do it, like Section 132, which is inherently coercive all the way through it, I don't think we would have a problem with polygamy, because it's unnatural for a first wife to want to share her husband with other women and share their assets. It's just unnatural without that inducement. And it's got to be a coercive inducement, which is what Section 132 is.
And it was kind of coercive from the very beginning. And what we maintain on this show, and the basis for our show, is that they use God in the coercion.
Oh, yeah.
And Joseph Smith did it from the very beginning, and that is, you're going to go to hell, you're going to be damned, God won't love you if you don't do this. And I was raised with that, and I know that it's not from God. I know that's not what it is at all.
Poor Jesus, he's been blamed for so many darn things,
Yeah, because it works.
Yeah.
It works.
It works. If you're a true believer, it works.
Okay, off-the-air question. Does the Allred group include the Bluffdale group?
They're one and the same.
They are the same.
Yeah, they're one and the same. Mm-hmm. In fact, the legal name of AUB is the presiding elder, the corporation of the presiding elder of Apostolic United Brethren. They took the same format as the church did. So the FLDS and so the Kingstons.
Well, now the All
It's a
Red
sole
group
corporation.
claims that they're just positioned right next to the LDS Church, so that when they bring polygamy back, they will be assimilated back into the main church.
Yeah, I think it was, I call it the Black Revelation, when President Spencer Kimball gave the blacks the priesthood. I think this was in '78. It set a shockwave all through the polygamous communities. And AUB decided that the church had lost all of their authority, and now they had it. So they restructured themselves to supplant the church. And they feel that they have all of the keys, and that the LDS Church are really the dissidents.
Right, they're the apostate. And
in a sense, they are.
They are, based on early Joseph Smith doctrine.
That's
they are
right.
apostate.
That's right.
It wouldn't be a church that would be recognized by them. Okay, line one, Ron from Salt Lake City. Hello, Ron, you're on the air.
Hello?
Yes, you need to turn at least turn the volume down on your TV set.
Right, I had to run in the other room. Is
Oh,
this Doris?
Yes, this is Doris.
Hey, Doris, John made a statement earlier about, polygamy not being practiced in what would they say, the big LDS church today. Now, I just have a clarification question, and I'm not going to claim to have any total expertise on this, but from what I understand, Doctrine and Covenants 132 is still doctrinal in the LDS church, and there is still a belief that men are going to become gods and rule over their kingdom, and they bring the women in along to be in the celestial kingdom, and they need to accumulate the more wives to have the more power. Now, are we talking semantics here? I mean, is that not by proxy or some kind of linguistically, aren't they practicing polygamy?
No, I don't think it's semantics. Some people claim it is, but it isn't. It's doctrine.
Right.
It's just doctrine.
Right.
Yes, it is doctrine.
What the church decided is that a celestial marriage meant being married in the temple under proper priesthood. So instead of calling it polygamy, they call it celestial marriage. The fundamentalists and Joseph Smith and Brigham Young taught, I mean, the documentation is just there, that you had to have plural wives in order to go to the highest degree of the celestial kingdom.
And they
exactly.
haven't taken
they don't remove that from the doctrine.
Well,
they
can't very well, because of verse 7. If you read verse 7, that's what gives the prophet all of the authority. So I'd like to see him amend it, if Jesus would give another revelation and say, hey, because of the way you people practiced all this, I'm removing it from the earth. I think the church could do a lot to discourage the practice of polygamy if they would come out with a stronger stand. But for their, they're doing pretty well without that.
Well, they claim that polygamy is, when we say everlasting covenant, because we challenge them with that, and they say it is an everlasting principle. We're just not living it right now, but it's everlasting, living in heaven, perhaps living it again here. So they are twisting the...
Okay, follow-up question. Now, men can remarry other women in the LDS Church in the temple. Is this correct or incorrect?
That's correct.
So is that not a form of polygamy?
It is.
Spiritual polygamy.
Okay, well, I think I've had my question answered, and thank you for your time.
And thanks for calling. In fact, that's an off-the-air question. I don't know if it's from the same caller or not. If an LDS man marries and the wife dies, he remarries still to both. Is that polygamy?
Yep.
Yes.
And he'll have both of those gals in the celestial kingdom if he makes it.
Yep. That's right. And they can't make it unless they're married.
Well, of course, I don't believe in all that stuff.
Well, that's what they teach. Yeah. That's part of their doctrine. Okay, we have line 2, Sue in Tooele. Hello, Sue. Hello, Sue?
Yes.
You're on the air.
I just wanted to ask a question regarding the previous caller, Lydia. She had mentioned that, who you thought the living prophet was today. And my comment was, there's prophets before Christ, Noah, Moses. And I just wondered, shouldn't there be living prophets after Christ's death?
No, because the Bible says that he's the final prophet. He's the final prophet, he's the final priest, and he is our king. And there are no other priests and no other prophets after Jesus Christ. Prophets were needed in the Old Testament to proclaim certain things. But when you read the book of Hebrews and you understand what's going on in that book, you'll understand too that there's no other prophet after Jesus Christ. It was all said with him and by him.
Well, thank you so much, Doris.
And
God
you're welcome.
bless.
Thank you very much. Well, we're getting towards the end of the show tonight. John, I want to thank you again for joining us. It's been very good. We never get through all the information because there's a lot here, but you've certainly given a lot of information about the All Red Group. I highly recommend this book for anyone who's interested in getting more information about polygamy and about the different groups that are around the Intermountain West. There's somewhere between 10 or 30 and 100,000 polygamists, so you'll find some interesting information. You know, my closing comments, I'd like to talk about the truth. During the trial of Jesus Christ, Pilate looked him in the face and he said, "What is truth?" Well, Jesus had already made the remark earlier to his disciples, "I am the truth." And Pilate was looking the truth right straight in the eye and didn't even recognize it. I want you to know that anyone who wants the truth, it's your responsibility to find it for yourself. Truth by its very nature is exclusive. Truth never tolerates compromise for the sake of love or unity. And truth is not afraid of the test. It's not afraid of your test. In fact, it invites your test. Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me." But there's many people who will take that statement and take the name Jesus out and put their own belief in. For instance, many people in this culture say polygamy is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through polygamy. Mormons say the same thing, that no one can come to the Father except through the Mormon Church. I heard one Mormon say at one time that God is not concerned that we know the truth as much as He's concerned that we just get along with each other. And you know what? That's an ugly lie. The truth is, no one gets into heaven besides through Jesus Christ. He is the truth. There's only one way to God, and people want to know, why is there only one way to God? Because Jesus is the only one who paid the price for our souls. The truth is exclusive. The truth is simple. It's tremendous. It's beautiful. The truth is powerful. It isn't hurtful. It isn't demanding and demeaning. It isn't conditional like polygamy is. And Jesus is the only way to God. And that's good news. Thanks for watching our show tonight. See you next week.